Part 1, The First Stain. The first time Leo saw it, he was closing a deal that would make him a junior partner at the firm. He was in the polished marble bathroom of the upscale restaurant, adjusting his tie in the mirror. The deal was dirty. He'd subtly sabotaged a colleague's presentation, feeding key weaknesses to the rival company in exchange for a future favor. He told himself it was just business. Survival of the fittest. In the mirror's reflection, just over his shoulder, stood a figure. He spun around, heart hammering. The bathroom was empty. He turned back to the mirror. It was still there. It was man-shaped, but impossibly thin, a wisp of darkness like a shadow-given skeletal form. It was no taller than his waist. Its surface wasn't solid, it seemed to be made of shifting, oily smoke, through which glimpses of something worse could be seen, the pale suggestion of a face, long, twig-like fingers. It had no discernible features, just two pinpricks of faint, red light where eyes should be. It stood perfectly still, simply watching him. Leo blinked rapidly, splashed water on his face. Stress. Too much coffee. When he looked again, it was gone. He shook it off, pasted on a winning smile, and went back to the table to accept the congratulations. The lie he told was smooth, effortless. I just presented our strongest points with conviction. The client beamed. Leo felt a warm surge of triumph. The tiny, nagging guilt was buried deep. He didn't see the thing in the corner of the office as he celebrated that night. But it was there. And after the lie, it had grown a fraction of an inch taller. Part 2, The Feeding. Weeks passed. Leo saw the creature, which he'd come to think of as the shade, more frequently. It was no longer confined to mirrors. It would be standing motionless at the end of a hallway at home, or sitting in the passenger seat of his car for a fleeting second before vanishing. Each time, it was slightly larger. It was now up to his chest. Its presence was tied to his transgressions, a pattern he began to dread. He lied to his fiancée, Sarah, about working late, when he was really having drinks with an assistant from another department. A harmless flirtation, he reasoned. That night, as he got into bed, the shade was standing in the corner of the bedroom. It was now his height. The pinprick eyes glowed a little brighter, and for the first time, he felt a sensation from it, a cold, focused attention. Sarah slept peacefully beside him, oblivious to the frozen terror coursing through him. The guilt was no longer a nagging feeling, it was a physical presence, growing fat on his sins. The horror escalated from visual to auditory. After he framed a subordinate for a costly error he himself had made, saving his own skin, of course, he heard it. A dry, rustling whisper, like pages turning in an ancient book, that seemed to come from inside his own head, coward. Leo started to unravel. He became jumpy, paranoid. He stopped looking in mirrors. He drank more. Sarah grew concerned. You're working too hard, Leo. You look like you've seen a ghost. He laughed, a brittle, hollow sound. Just tired. The shade, now looming a head taller than him, stood behind her, its smoky form seeming to drink in the new lie. Part 3, The Physicality of Guilt. The monster began to interact with the world in subtle, terrifying ways. It was no longer just a spectator. Leo was about to tell his aging mother he couldn't lend her money for her medications because times were tight, while secretly planning a lavish vacation. As he formed the lie on the phone, the shade, now a hulking giant of swirling darkness that had to stoop under the ceiling, stood behind his chair. A long, cold finger of smoke extended and brushed against his neck. Leo gasped, dropping the phone. The touch was like ice and decay. It left a faint, grayish smear on his skin that wouldn't wash off, a brand of his deceit. The whispers became clearer, a chorus of his own victims' voices, real and imagined. I trusted you. Why, Leo? Liar. He was trapped. Confessing would destroy the life he had built, his career, his relationship with Sarah. But silence was feeding the beast that was slowly, surely, claiming his reality. The air around it grew cold. Objects near it would sometimes tarnish or rot. The beautiful, modern apartment he shared with Sarah began to feel like a tomb, perpetually chilled, smelling faintly of dust and regret. Part 4, The Confrontation. The climax came at the firm's annual gala, the pinnacle of his social and professional life. He was to be named partner. He stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of smiling, envious faces. Sarah beamed with pride in the front row. And there, standing beside her, was the shade. It was now a monstrous entity, its head brushing the crystal chandelier. The smoky form had solidified into a grotesque parody of a man in a business suit, but twisted and distended. The pinprick eyes were now glowing coals. In the shifting smoke of its face, Leo could see fleeting, tortured images, the betrayed face of his colleague, the worried look of his mother, Sarah's trusting eyes. The whispers were a roar in his skull, a symphony of his guilt. It took a step towards him, its movement no longer silent but a heavy, dragging sound on the polished floor. No one else reacted. It was coming for him. Not to kill him, he understood with sudden, chilling clarity. It was going to make him speak. He tried to read his speech, but the words on the page swam. His voice faltered. The crowd's smiles began to fade. Sarah's face filled with confusion. The shade reached the podium. It leaned in, and the entire room seemed to grow dark and cold. A collective shiver went through the audience. "Leo," someone whispered. The monster's voice, a grating, stone-on-stone sound, erupted not in his mind, but in the dead silence of the room, for all to hear. It was a composite of every person he had ever wronged. "Tell them," it boomed. "Tell them about the presentation you sabotaged. Tell them about the man you framed. Tell Sarah about the assistant." Panic erupted. People gasped, looking around for the source of the voice. Leo was frozen, a rabbit in the gaze of a predator. "The lies are my sustenance. But the truth is my purpose. Confess, or I will become you. I will wear your life as a skin." The shade opened a maw of darkness, and Leo saw an abyss inside, a void that. Part 5, The Truth, or the Emptiness. In that moment of absolute terror, Leo broke. The words tore from him, a torrent of confession. He confessed to everything, the sabotage, the framing, the lies to Sarah, the neglect of his mother. He screamed it all into the microphone, his body shaking with violent sobs. The gala descended into chaos. He saw Sarah's face crumble from confusion to horror to utter devastation. As he spoke each truth, the shade shuddered. With every admission, it shrank, its form becoming less substantial. The cold receded. The oppressive weight lifted. When the last terrible truth was out, Leo collapsed to his knees, utterly broken. He looked up. The shade was gone. The room was silent but for his ragged breathing and Sarah's quiet weeping. He was free of the monster. But he was not saved. He had traded one horror for another. He was left in the devastating, hollow silence of a ruined life. The monster of his guilt was gone, but the emptiness it left behind was a different kind of terror. He was now a man with nothing, standing in the blinding, unforgiving light of the truth. He was alone. And he knew, with a certainty that was worse than any ghost or ghoul, that the memory of the shade, and the crushing weight of the truths it had forced out, would haunt him for the rest of his days. The real horror was no longer the monster he could see, but the man he had become, and the life he had destroyed, which was now all he could see.